Well, welcome back, everybody, to Positive Connections, Halt and Call for Backup. And we have a great guest today. I have the honor and privilege to work with her every day at First Responder Wellness, the program director, and her name is Rose Maynard. Rose, welcome to Halt and Call for Backup.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Rose, tell us a little bit about your journey and how did you come to work in the field of mental health and specifically with first responders?
Um, Man. So since I was probably in high school, I thought I want to help people. I want to be in the world of psychology. I think oftentimes clients will ask me, well, what do you know about trauma and, things like that. You're not a first responder, and I'm not. And then I will tell them, I was like, nobody really becomes a therapist because like everything is okay growing up. And so I had this role of being my friend's therapist, of being my family's therapist. And I used to jokingly say, I'll just get paid for it now. So I had this idea in high school. I knew that it was going to be a long journey to get my doctorate. That's going to cost a lot of money. And so I decided to go to massage school right out of high school so that I could afford school. I was able to get all of my undergrad done without any student loans because I was able to afford it through massage. But I'm really grateful I went through that route because learning so much about the body really helps inform my clinical practice now. I'm constantly looking at somatic work and what's happening in the body and how it's informing psychology. So I worked through massage. I still occasionally do the occasional massage just because I enjoy it. Um, but as I did that, I knew also I wanted to work with trauma. I come from a family of military primarily. I have a lot of military in my family. I have a couple of first responders, and unfortunately, we also lost a family member in the military, and he was overseas. And I just remember watching the devastation in my family. Fortunately, we have a very connected family, so watching people show up and help support our family members. And I remember thinking, I want to be somebody who can help people through these transitions. He went out and got deployed. How do I help people through those transitions? How do I help people when they lose somebody and then transitioning home and all of through that? So my primary focus had been with military. My research has been um, with military as well. My primary research study has been with people as they leave the military, so that separation process and how they improve in reintegrating back into civilian life. So that's really where my primary focus had been. And then a friend of mine that I used to work at FRW, he said, "Hey Rose, I think that you would be really great here." And I was like, I kind of like where I am. I think I'm okay. And then very shortly after, it had less to do with the clients and more to do with the leadership, but I was very unfulfilled there. And I remember calling up the clinical director at the time and been like, "Hey, is there still a position available?" And um, there's a lot of similarities in military and first responders, and many first responders are military. And I found working in it so fulfilling. I also, like I said, I also have family who are first responders, so really having a passion to be a part of that change. Um, yeah, I'm sure I could go on and on, but yeah.
Oh, I love it. And you're a blessing coming to first responder wellness too. And it's hard to find a really good therapist that specializes in trauma. Why do you think that is? I mean, there's lots of people that do therapy, lots of people that have, all these clinical connections, but to find a true good therapist or a team that deals specifically with trauma, what do you think about that?
I have lots of thoughts. I have a lot of friends, or maybe not even friends. I just know that a lot of people will talk about um, I work with trauma, but not necessarily understanding. Well, let me rewind and say I think that a lot of people want to work with trauma. I think there's a lot of need for working in trauma. I think that every person has some semblance of trauma, whether it be little t or big T. And I think that a lot of people will say, I work with trauma, and they're used to working maybe with a cumulative little t. And then I hear about therapists who are detrimental to the clients that we get at First Responder Wellness because they say they work with trauma, but they're poorly trained in working with trauma or poorly experienced. And I think one of the things that happens um, in that is I think that people who say they work with trauma and are not very well capable of it, it's their own lack of awareness, their own lack of self-growth, I think. Um, that there is to work with trauma, there has to be awareness of myself. What is mine and what is theirs? And can I separate the two? As somebody who works very experientially, I'm constantly tapping into what do I feel in my body and how is it informing me about what my client might be feeling? And also, am I aware if it's mine or theirs? And then on top of all of that, having my own great self-care. And I think that a lot of people who come into this field are here to help others and forget to help themselves. And so if you are a trauma therapist who is not taking care of themselves, it's going to result in really poor outcomes.
And it's such that it's that balance you're talking about right here, and it's such a dichotomy too with the first responder realm because me and Jim were former first responders too, and in that realm, you're out there helping everybody, right? But you a lot of times forget to help yourself. So you're out there doing this job, you're doing great work, you're helping people, you're saving lives, but then you don't get to take a step back and look at yourself and work on yourself. There's that balance
Mhm.
that you need, right?
Totally. I've had clients, and I'm not trying to bash other therapists. Of course, there's a lot of great therapists out there, but I've also heard clients tell me, I haven't had a great time in therapy. My therapist is cold and distant, and maybe that's a therapist who's really burnt out, who is working with a lot of trauma but really burnt out. Again, goes back to self-care. Or I've had clients tell me I broke my therapist, that I shared something with them and they just started crying. And there is appropriate time, I think, to cry with your client, but being able to determine when that appropriate time is really important. Um, I've also had clients tell me that their therapists have stopped them mid sharing and say, I'm sorry, I need you to stop. It's too much for me. And so, and those are therapists who say, I work with trauma.
That blows me away. It blows me away, especially stopping in the middle of something like that, and it could do so much harm, right?
Yeah.
Because a
Will
lot
that
of us don't
person
go
ever
back.
go back?
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Rose, one of the things I want to kind of take your comments and go a little bit backwards from the present moment. I love it that you take great care of yourself, your self-care. What are some of the things that you go through yourself for personal self-care that you might be able to help others with that are listening to the podcast?
I have incredible boundaries. Um, and so it's taken a lot. Like that is not something that I think that I could have always said. Um, but when I am not at work, I'm not on. I trust the team that we have and that if they need some guidance that they'll reach out to me. I trust that our leadership team, there's always somebody who's on call leadership and if they needed something from me, they would reach out. Otherwise, I do my best to really disconnect from work. Then I spend time snuggling my dog. I spend time hanging out with my husband, snuggling him too. I engage in things that I really love. On Saturdays, I spend the day at the ceramic studio. I da dabble in this and that just because, that feels good to me. Also, I mean, self-care, I think, is is also like I clean my kitchen. It's not something I love to do, but I clean my kitchen. I shampoo my carpets. I take a shower, right? Doing those things that maybe don't feel like things I want to do, but I know that at the end of it, like that's gonna feel so nice to have that done.
Nice. Good balance
Mhm.
for sure. I know that first responder wellness is so unique, and I love working there, and we have a great staff there. A lot of us don't know what our organization is and what we do. And can you sort of walk us through what someone can expect when they come to FRW for help?
Mhm. Um, I think the client experience coming in right off the bat is pretty warm and welcoming. So they'll be greeted by a BHT or behavioral health tech, and they'll um, take them to where they will have their intake, whatever level of care they're coming in. They're met with a nurse or they're met with you, Mike, and um, greeted them and taking them through the process. I know the first 3 to 7 days are the absolute hardest. That there is everything in their body that says this is scary, this is not safe, even if, cognitively they can say this is the right thing. It usually takes about 3 days. Their hypervigilance is so severe that usually between 3 to 7 days, that's when people tap out. If they can make it past that, we're doing pretty okay. But it is really scary, and it's not because we are scary. In fact, there is so much support. It is that everything is new. The other part of the challenge, I think, is clients do so much to try to distract themselves from what's going on inside of them, whether it be through substances or constantly scrolling on their phones or, working out in the garage, whatever it is. And then when they come to us, we say, do nothing. And that is when their brain goes, hang on, all of these things you've been trying to ignore, let me make that prevalent to you. And so it is really, really hard. And throughout all of that, you're meeting with your therapist within the first 3 days, you're meeting with your case manager in the first 3 days. You constantly have support when you need it. And I think it's one of the most incredible things is the peers, are the peers that I can say we have the best staff in the world, which I biasly think. Um, but I think more than anything, it's the groups. It's the engaging with peers that, you walk into the station, you walk into your department and I don't talk about my emotions, I don't share what's going on, but when you are the new person and you walk into a group and people are crying and people are sharing about their experiences and you go, "Oh my gosh, I'm not the only one who has had that experience and I am safe to feel my feelings." That's so profound.
And the realization that, oh my God, there's help available. It's okay to get help. It's okay to use that V word, vulnerability,
Hmm.
right? We can actually get, into our emotions and about what we've been wanting to talk about maybe our whole lives. A lot of it
Hmm.
has to do with childhood experiences growing up
Hmm.
and why we became a first responder. Why did we go to the military in the first place? And then
Hmm.
now, Jim loves to say this too. We start off in the academy on our A game. And when they get to us, they're not on their A game anymore. And they get
Hmm.
that, like, hey, you need to take a step back. You need to look at yourself and just try to go with it and then connect with your peers. And it's so new for everybody because I ask almost everyone that comes in, I know this is your first time in treatment, and probably 95% of the time it's their first time in
Hmm.
treatment. And it's scary. And it's scary for the family members too. How important is it for the family members to be a part of it and their support group on the outside?
Oh, I think it depends on the family. I do, I want to say that it is of utmost importance that there is support, whatever that support looks like. I think for me, the better question is how important is it that family makes change? Not so much like family support. Again, I think that family support is really important, but I think it depends on the family and what that support looks like. As a marriage and family therapist, I strongly believe in systemic change, and so it is not just on the client to make change. The whole system has to make change. So the family has to make change, and the way this individual is interacting with others and the way they respond to them needs to make change. And so I think without that like systemic change, change is going to be pretty challenging to sustain. And so, of course, I would love to say, like, if you have a great family who can support in really appropriate ways, that is so incredible and can really make somebody's experience even that much better. And also, if you don't have a family member who is willing to make change, but say, I'll support without making my own change, then that sometimes is not support that's helpful.
Rose, a lot of the listeners that are emergency responders or they're retired, and we notice that the suicide rate is so much higher now in the retirees that
Mhm.
maybe not have a goal in life anymore, or they have chronic health conditions that they're going through, or whatever the stressors are they've endured or are enduring now. A lot of them can be on the fence about reaching out. It's that classic moment in time where, as first responders, we're always going on calls for service. We're always handing out resources. We have all the resource information at our fingertips. If you need financial assistance, give this person a call. Give this place a call. If you need a place to stay, here's this place that's just waiting for you. If you need
Mhm.
mental health, here are these people, all free of charge. Just give them a call. But when it comes to asking and reaching out for ourselves, how often, first responders that are so used to calling for backup when they're encountering these calls for service, a second alarm fire, whatever it is, struggle for reaching out for themselves. What do you wish more first responders knew about getting help?
Mhm. The thing that immediately pops in my head is it's not weak. That getting help is not a sign of weakness. And that is so much the dominant like belief is that to ask for help must mean I'm weak because I can't do it on my own. Human beings are the most social creature on the animal planet, in the animal kingdom. And there's evidence of that. I've had people push back and go, but what about dolphins or something else? But humans are the most social, and actually, scientifically, one of the evidences we have of that is we have the largest whites of our eyes, the sclera. And the intention of the sclera is it tells me, where are you looking? Are you attuned to me? Are you connecting to me? Are you connecting with me? And if there's danger, we can have a face-to-face conversation and I can alert you to danger by just my eyes. I can alert you to danger without alerting the danger that we were, designed, or however you want to say it, to be face to face and in connection with one another. And so this idea, however, I think in our American culture is that you have to know how to do it alone, that it's strong to be independent, and while yes, have your independence and your autonomy, that you were supposed to do this together. There's this um, quote, actually. My husband just reminded me of this the other day, that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that is something so powerful. Actually, another study I was just reading just recently. I don't know if you want all of this like
Oh,
nerdy
heck yeah.
stuff, but okay.
Right on.
I was just recently reading a study. I think it came out 2008, 2009, so I'm a little behind on it. But they did this study where they had people stand at the bottom of a hill. They look up at the hill and they're supposed to guess what the grading of this hill is. What is the intensity of this incline? Then they had people stand there with their best friend and then grade the intensity of this incline. And then they conjured up the image, and they pretended as if their best friend was there, and they did that as well. And what they found over and over, when you had someone there with you, your brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. And so whether they brought up the image of their friend or they were actually standing there with their friend, on average, they scaled that the intensity of the same hill was much less, significantly less than if you were standing there alone. And so again, like asking for help is not to say weakness. We were supposed to do things together. Yeah.
I love that. And it's like in our fields too. I mean, we go into a smoldering or burning building as a team. We go and do these operations and help people as a team.
Hmm.
And we should be able to look at ourselves and look at our organizations and our friends and our families and say, you know what? I can do this alone, but I don't have to. And
Hmm.
knowing that you don't have to do this alone is such a relief. It
Hmm.
really is.
And unfortunately, the message somehow that was translated or received was people won't be there for you. I'm not good enough. I'm not valuable. I'm not important enough, or I'm not worthy enough of that help. And so I have to do this alone. I'm too much for others. And so I think not only is there this idea in the culture that to ask for help is weakness, but there's also this individual identity of I'm not enough or I'm not worthy of the help that might be given to me.
Or we get sometimes also that I don't deserve it as much as another person deserves it. They need it a lot more than I do. I can do this on my own. Do you hear that sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so I think when I mentioned earlier about appropriate times to cry with your clients, I think the times where I get so overwhelmed is when I'm trying to tell a client, I wish you could see you the way I see you. I wish that you can see how important of a person you are. And it's not because of the things that you do, because of the things you've accomplished, but instead it's just because you are, right? You are valuable, you are worthy, you are enough because you exist, because you are a person, and not because of the things you do. And I think anyone who's struggling with their mental health, they will know. It doesn't matter all the accolades, all the awards, all the things that I've gotten, it they still don't feel like they're enough because that is not their belief. And so again, I just sometimes want to shake them and be like, except that you are, and I hope that you can see that. And my whole goal, they'll tell me like, okay, Rose, I'll buy in because like you seem like you want me to, that you seem like you think this might work, and I go, okay, well, just hang on long enough. Like, let me convince you that you
Mm.
are enough.
Rose, take us through a therapeutic moment from your office where you blend your style of therapy with somatic therapy. All your education and training comes to bear. What kind of client experience in your office?
Mm. I hope that clients will say that what they experience in my office is profound empathy. I also know that, like in a group setting, clients will say that my groups are both one of their favorites and the ones they are most afraid of. I strongly believe that growth happens outside of their comfort zone. And so I'm constantly trying to push them into the uncomfortable to show them like, look, you could manage it. It's okay. Um, and I like to think that I'm pretty congruent. So just as you see me here is kind of how I am in therapy. And so they'll be met with empathy and grace and kindness and understanding. And I'm constantly thinking like, what is the function? What is the purpose of this behavior? It's not about like, let me shame you for doing this thing. Instead, even if you feel like this is the most horrific thing you've ever done, I'm still going to look at what what was the function? Like, why did this happen? How did this serve you and protect you and save you? And then help you provide yourself with some empathy. And I'm going to point out incongruences. I'm going to point out when you said this, but you did this, that doesn't make sense. Make it make sense to me. I'm going to, when I notice their body getting a little uncomfortable, I'm going to call it out. Instead of letting them run away from the emotion, I'm going to help them see that this emotion isn't trying to break them. This emotion is trying to give them some information. And so let's bring awareness to it and then find out what information it's trying to give them. I constantly will talk about like pain is the number one thing people try to push aside. And pain is not, it's not a bad thing. Pain is there to give you information. Um, Feelings are called feelings because we feel them, and any client who's ever met me will be able to finish that sentence because I've said it a million times. But feelings are called feelings because we feel them, and so if we have uncomfortable feelings, that is physically painful. And if you have an ingrown toenail and you ignore it, it gets infected. If you ignore the infection grows till one of two options. You get sepsis and you die, or you get an amputation. That actually happened to my friend's dad. He's amputated below the knee because he ignored an ingrown toenail. And the same with emotional pain. If we ignore it, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Probably heard like avoidance of the problem creates a much bigger problem. And so I'm trying to help clients see that it's not bad. Pain is not bad. Uncomfortable emotions are not bad. They're giving you some form of information about your experience, about what's coming up. And so let's understand it rather than push it aside.
I love that. And we have all these protectors that we carry with us. We have these shields and this armor and these faces that we put on. And I remember so many great times where a first responder would leave a therapy session and I'd happen to bump into them and they go, you know what? This is the first time in the last 5 times I went to the therapy that I did not cry, or I cried for the very first time.
Mhm.
And you want to put that mask back on and go back into your peers and say everything's great, but you're finally starting to melt away some of those things that have been bugging you so long. What do you think are some of the most common misconceptions first responders have about seeking treatment?
Mhm. I think I think the belief is that you have to be at rock bottom to get help, that you need to wait until you absolutely have run out of all resources before you can get help. And I wish that people would come to treatment sooner. I wish that the majority of our clients didn't start in residential treatment. I wish that they could come in at IOP, let me get a little tune up, and then, you know, great, wonderful. I wish that people noticed sooner and that they knew that it was okay to ask for help sooner.
I know we're like we get in there when we're riding on the rims, and all the sparks are flying down the freeway, and then we can't go anymore. It's like, okay, all right, now I'm willing to go get some help. Maybe Rose is right, but it doesn't have to be that way. When you find and they call it the bottom, whatever it is, everybody's bottom's a little bit different, but it's when you can come to that decision and realization that, okay, it's okay to get help. I'm going to get help, and I'm doing it for myself. Number
Yeah,
one.
and I think that's the other piece of it that um, taking the time is not it's not a waste of time to help yourself. And I again it goes back to some of those core beliefs that I don't deserve this or whatever they might be. But I this is not a waste of time. The time that you might be missing from work or the time that you might be missing from your family is so worth it because how much time are you already missing out on those things because you can't be present, because you are having to withdraw, isolate, use in order to make it day to day. And so I always am encouraging clients, what's a couple of weeks, what's a couple more weeks to have your entire rest of your life. So I think another thing I would want people to know is that it's not a waste of time to take time for themselves.
What's the group look like to you, Rose, for a client who's coming in brand new, surrounded by however many people are in your group? What do they experience walking in? Because I have so many clients that say, I don't mind doing individual therapy. I'd like to go to a facility, but I don't want to talk in front of anybody else.
Mhm.
What do they experience in your group?
In my group or in groups at FRW?
Let's go with your group first, and then we'll
Okay.
handle FRW next.
Um, they will have fun and be probably terrified altogether. One of my clients just the other day, not well, one of the clients at FRW just the other day said, "No, my first group with you, you had her standing on a chair," right? Like, I am never going to push somebody to participate who it's very clear to me that pushing them to do so would be detrimental. But I am going to strongly encourage people to get a little uncomfortable. And so in my groups, I generally will give some sort of science. As you can probably see, I love the research. I'm going to give some scientific backing to what I'm talking about. I will provide some sort of experiential activity where the intention is to elicit and become aware of some form of some emotion that's coming up, whether it be a positive emotion. I will take groups out. We're going to go skip. And I know that when clients hear that, they go, no, thank you. And yet when they do it, man, what incredible like changes they feel just by having a little bit of fun. Or I might bring them into a space to become aware of some of the hidden parts of them that are really scary, and then I'm going to help them process through it. I will always end with some way to put a good bow on it so that people aren't left, feeling open, vulnerable, and exposed. But the intention is to allow people to to experience the things that they've been hiding from. In all of our groups, I've developed a pretty great curriculum. It's pretty similar. Here's some information. Here's maybe a little activity, so that it's a little bit more engaging. The intention is to elicit conversation or allow people the space to disclose if they feel appropriate and capable of doing so, and bold enough to do so. And I think the client experience initially when they first get to FRW, they kind of sit back and they'll just watch. But pretty quickly, most clients will say, well, this person said that and this person said that. And initially people might just go, thank you for sharing that. That really hit something in me. And then you start to hear their shares change. They go from thank you for sharing, that really impacted me, to now I'm sharing. And then as they get towards the end of treatment, they start to offer encouragement to others to share. And I also have heard a number of clients say, the group's not really for me. I want to do more individual therapy. And I am the first person to encourage them and empower them that if you if you don't engage in the group dynamic, you are missing out on the meat and potatoes of what will make change. Again, we could have the most amazing team, but the most amount of growth is going to happen in that peer-to-peer exchange. I constantly will tell clients you can't get well by osmosis. You can't just sit in groups and take in the information and think that change is going to happen just by being there. There has to be some engagement. And so I will ask people, once they've kind of settled in, I challenge you. Say one thing, even if it's just, oh, I really liked what you said. Just building up some of that courage to say just one thing in each group.
Yeah, good courage is the word, right? The
Mhm.
courage, having that courage to stand up and speak your truth and tell people what you know, are always worried about what other people are thinking about you. And you
Mhm.
get into a group of other former or current first responders and groups in general. I'm just not saying just first responders, but specifically with FRW, that's who we deal with. And to hear someone else's story, a lot of times we'll hear our own story in someone else's share before
Mm,
we're willing or having the courage to actually share ourselves. And it sort of opens
absolutely.
up the door to them to get in and dive deep into some stuff, some things that maybe they've never shared before to anybody, and it's so healing. It really
And
is.
I think that is the fear in sharing, right? That I am afraid I'm going to share something and going to be rejected, or people won't understand what I'm saying. It's not just vulnerability, right? There takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable, but there's also this like fear that people are going to think of me differently, that the something is going to change in my relationship. Again, we are highly social creatures and we want to have a sense of belonging. And if I share, how will that change my belonging? And then when they do build up the courage to share, that it ends up being something so profound of, wow, I'm not the only one. When I shared, this person said, yeah, me too, right? And that is such a change in dynamic of how you think about yourself.
Right, right. Normalizes it, right?
Mhm.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Your groups are awesome too. I've been to Rose's groups before too, and you got me jumping up and shaking my arms and stuff, and it's uncomfortable, but everybody gets up and does it. You know, they do what you say, and it's very healing. It's very entertaining, healing, and helpful for sure.
That's actually one of my favorite things about working with this population, Al- alongside just that this is a thing that I'm very passionate about. I think my own brain works really well. I think in another life, I probably was a first responder or was in the military. I think that, again, my whole family's military, so it's kind of weird that I didn't go that route, but there's still days I think about it. Anyways, one thing I really love working with this population is um, the willingness and the motivation for change that even if it feels really uncomfortable, if they're asked, the majority of clients, if asked to do something super silly and wacky, just because I ask them to, they will try it. They go, I trust you, Rose. I don't know how else to get help. And so if you can, if whatever you're going to ask me to do will make change, what do I know? Okay, I'll try it.
And that's huge. You said,
Mhm,
I trust you. To have a
mhm,
first responder say, I trust you is huge because a lot of us go in and we don't trust ourselves, let alone trusting anybody else with, what we have to deal with.
mhm.
A lot of people out there are suffering right now and afraid to get help. What are the normal things that a lot of us will be enduring and struggling with? And this sort of shows like maybe I do need to get help. Maybe I can't do this alone. Maybe I need to reach out. What are some people facing out there right now that they're starting to see those red flags go up where they might need to get some help or they might need to reach out or talk about it to somebody?
I think isolation and withdrawal are probably some of the first ones. Even if it's like in a room, well, I still show up to parties. I still go to my family's house, but how present and engaged are you able to be while there? I think those are some of the very earliest signs. I finding myself pulling away more. I'm not having as many conversations with people as I would. I'm finding myself blanking out, right? That going into this space where you're not fully present. I've had many clients say I can't remember the last 5, 10 years of my life, and that happens because of this disconnection from themselves in order to protect themselves. And so isolation, withdrawal, um, that social disconnection is one of the earliest signs of like you probably need to seek some help. And that can happen for years before people actually do seek help.
And if someone's listening right now, Rose, and they're struggling and they're a first responder or anybody else, what would you tell them right now? What would you want them to hear from you?
There's so many things that I'm trying to figure out what's the thing, right? I want them to know that they are enough, they are not too much, that they are important, that seeking help doesn't mean anything wrong. In fact, that is a hugely brave thing to do. Uh, I know that they rather be in running into a burning building or running after a bad guy, than seeking help. And it's a really brave thing to ask for help. It's not weakness.
Give us some tips, Rose. Practical tools our listeners can start using right here, right now.
seeing as isolation and withdrawal is one of the first indicators that you really need to seek some help. I think the opposite, right? So finding ways to engage, finding people to share with that that shame says don't talk to anyone, and going against that, where it feels intuitive to not. But I think finding people that you can share with, and maybe it's not your partner because you are afraid to share with your husband or your wife that you're struggling, but maybe that best friend, or maybe they go to church, maybe the pastor, maybe just somebody, hey, I'm really struggling. So finding even just peer support, right? Telling someone I need help or I'm struggling. I think that, and then also doing things to help be present, being in the here and now. So I will take clients out to do mindfulness walks. So as you're walking, what sort of things are you hearing? What things are you seeing, smelling? What do you taste? Even like, can you feel your toes touching the ground every time you take a step, or your arms swishing past your shirt every time you move your arm back and forth, and just becoming more aware of what's happening here and now? Another thing that might be really helpful are gratitude journals. I know that there's a lot of people who say, I don't journal, like that's a teenage girl thing. And also, I've heard over and over and over clients say that that is the thing that has helped them so much. And the reason why gratitude journals really are effective, again, here's some more science for you. There's a part of your brain called the reticular activation system, and it says if you look for it, you'll find it. And it's the reason why when I'm in middle school and I have a crush on a boy named Oliver, now I'm seeing Oliver's name pop up everywhere. Oh, it's a sign we're meant to be. My husband's name is not Oliver. It was not meant to be. But it also is that part of your brain that says, I'm researching a new car, and you're seeing it pop up all over the road before you hadn't seen it before, but now it's all over the place. It's the filtration system that says, this is important to me, I'll find it. So if you start your day with a gratitude journal, you're training your brain to start to look for things that you are grateful for and why are you grateful for them. So instead of looking at the world in doom and gloom, you really start to train your brain to see the good. If you look for bad and why the world sucks, you'll find it. It's out there. The evidence is there. But also the contrary is also true. If you look for ways that life is good, that um, that you are well, that you are great, you are wonderful, you'll find those things too.
Love that. Positive breeds positive. The
Hmm.
opposite is true with negative. Um,
Absolutely.
and journaling is huge. A lot of us don't do it for whatever reasons, and a lot what you were talking about. But having a gratitude journal and even a documentation of your life, right, of your recovery program, of what you're doing now. Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't have that great a memory where I couldn't remember everything from today. But tonight, if I journal about it, a year from now, I'll be able to look back and go, yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
Hmm.
Right.
And then that also breeds gratitude.
Mhm.
Remember that time that I was really, really struggling, and now I can look back at it and go, yeah, I made it through that, you know?
I love that. Well,
Mhm.
let's sort of close this down here a little bit. I like to end this with myths versus reality as it relates to trauma and addiction, specifically for first responders. And here's myth number one. First responders are trained to handle trauma. They should be fine.
Mm, definitely not. Um, I think that they're unfortunately trained to handle trauma as children because whatever they had growing up taught them to handle trauma. And unfortunately, they're not taught how to process trauma. They're just taught how to take on trauma. And at some point, that bucket becomes too full and overflows.
Myth number two, addiction, alcoholism is a choice. They should just stop.
Mm-mm. There is two ways to think about this. One, there's biological aspects of substance use, of alcohol use, and some people are just wired genetically to be more prone to developing addiction. The other part is addiction and substance use. It's a very intuitive thing to help keep you alive. If you didn't have it, there may be um, burnout. Your body cannot manage. It's the thing that says, this is my alternative, then suicide. And so I always am going to tell my clients, I'm not going to shame you for your substance use because it's the thing that has kept you alive. However, I am going to teach you other things to use instead.
Yes, I love that. Myth number three, if a first responder admits they're struggling, they'll lose their job.
Mm. Uh, Unfortunately, that's sometimes the case, but not most of the time. Most of the time, that's what peer support is there for. They're going to come in, give them some resources, even refer them to us, and they'll actually be way better off in their job, more effective at that job once, they're able to help manage some of the trauma they've been experiencing.
Myth number four, if you can't handle the stress, you shouldn't be a first responder.
Mm. I'm going to go back to that myth number one. They can handle the stress probably more than anyone else, and that is probably the problem.
Hmm.
There's this term that is constantly used of distress tolerance, and that we're supposed to try and decrease distress or increase distress tolerance. And I think with first responders, they have too much distress tolerance, that they take on way too much, and that is is creating the problem, taking on way more than people should.
And I got one last one. There's lots of them here, but I'm just going to end up with this one. Myth number five, you can't recover and return to duty after addiction or trauma.
Then what would my job be? That is, you know, uh, that is so far from the truth. Again, I think that recovery and like a journey to wellness makes you more impactful in your job and then in your families and anywhere else that you'd like to be. Oftentimes clients will tell me that I hope that I can go back to this version of me, and I tell them I hope that you get to be a fuller version of you than you've ever been. And that's generally what ends up happening.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of us too, we have finally figured out like, you know what, maybe it's not safe for me to go back to work. Maybe I could do something else with my life. That happens
And
some.
it's not that you're not capable, it's that you just choose to not put yourself in that space anymore.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Rose, as we start slowing the show down, is there anything you wanted to bring to the audience that you haven't had a chance to talk about yet?
Two things pop in my head. Something that was discussed earlier and I want to come back to is um, clients will commonly tell me, Rose, I used to be good at processing information. I used to be okay. I think you mentioned that they used to they were on their A game. And I don't think that they ever were good at processing information. I think that they had an empty closet that they threw all of their trauma in. And now their trauma is full to their brim. The closet is full and it's busting off the hinges, and that's when we end up getting them. And so I want to repeat and say over again that it may not be that you are fine. It may be that you have a more empty closet. And I highly encourage people to become aware of that and let us help clean your closet before it starts busting off the hinges. I think if I could get any message across to people listening, I want people to know that they're not broken, that everything that they are doing and has been going on, it's not because they're broken, but there is a very resilient part of them that is trying their best to keep them safe. And it may just need some guidance on how to do that, but that they are not broken, that they are perfect the way that they are.
Love that.
Rose, tell us about your private practice and if you're accepting clients away from first responder wellness.
I do have a small private practice. I can meet with people throughout California virtually, but I also have an office in person in Irvine. Um, I If appropriate, we'll probably refer people to FRW, but also if you are feeling like I don't need all of that, then they're welcome to come on, reach out to me. My phone number, you can text me, you can call me, is 916-905-ROSE. So again, that's 916-905-7673. And then my email address for that private practice is rosemaynard.therapy@gmail.com. But if they are finding that they may need some more help, then just private practice might be able to provide them. FRW is a great resource, and I will continue to preach FRW because, I love it. I think that we do really great work there. The website is an easy place to check us out. The website is first responder hyphen or dash wellness.com, and the admissions line, if you just want to talk to somebody and get some ideas on it, the admissions line is 888-732-5731.
And we'll put all those in the show notes for our listeners out there.
Perfect.
And we got trained staff. We've got trained admissions where they're not trying to sell you anything. They'll give you the straight line. They will tell you the truth about what's going on, what to expect. It's very nerve-wracking sometimes to think that we need to get help. And whatever brings you to get help, whether it's your family members, your job, mistakes that we've made, any kind of issues, at least it gets you to that front door. All you have to do is open it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've had people working with admissions for a year plus just to be on their radar in case they ever reach out again.
Yep, when you're ready.
And maybe another thing I should mention if you want to add it in or not, but all of our therapists are trained in specialized trauma care, accelerated resolution therapy. All of our therapists are trained in that, and it's profound. So
Thanks, everybody, for listening to Halt and Call for Backup. Our guest today is Dr. Rose Maynard. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She also has her doctorate and master's degrees, and she's focused her research efforts on military, first responders, and their families. As you can tell from the show today, she is passionate about her work. Thank you so much, Dr. Maynard, for joining us today on Halt and Call for Backup.
happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, bro. It's been such a pleasure, and it's such a pleasure knowing that I'll be there next week working side by side with you.
Hmm.
And I love it. Everybody listening out there, I know there could be some rough things, but there's some beautiful things out there too. And Rose is one of them, and First Responder Wellness, and of course my buddy and my brother Jim here. So if you're having struggles, I hope this helped out a little bit. I hope it gives you a little bit more clarity and maybe the inspiration to develop that courage to pick up that phone and make that call and get to that door and open it, because I'm telling you what, the stuff on the inside of it is purely a miracle and a blessing. So if you're having struggles, remember, halt and call for backup.
Don't get fooled again.